I had exposure to the financial industry because my dad, he's not a Wall Street guy, but he's financial services stock picker, has been for 20 years on the buy side. So I knew a lot about it just from listening to him talk about it at dinner, and um, started to learn a lot more about derivatives my freshman year of college, and found them really interesting. And that kind of combined itself with my interest in blockchain because I realized that derivatives are a really high friction industry. There's a lot of extra costs there when it comes to sharing data, running your trades through clearing agencies, and the other 10 million middlemen that exist in the industry. So I was like, wait, you could do this on blockchain, you could do this on Stellar, and it would be 1,000 times cheaper. So yeah, I got really interested in that. That was the original goal of our startup, and my school had the option to get credit for writing a research paper if it got published. So I talked to one of my professors about it, and he said go for it, and he said he'd sponsor it. So I spent a semester just doing research into the derivative industry and how you could make it run on Stellar, and put together a paper, and I managed to get it published.
Wow. So everyone listening, two things you should walk away with is take care of that dinner time. When you're at the table, talk about, what you're doing, because you just might inspire the next Marcus. And two, I tweeted the other day, I said, Marcus is someone to watch in the community. And I hope you can already see that right now. So Project Venus. DeFi on Stellar using Turing signing servers. Let's just start off for everyone listening in here. How would you best describe a Turing signing server?
It's a layer 2. It's if anybody listening has heard of rollups on Ethereum, it's pretty similar to that concept in that you have a server off the blockchain that is running and processing smart contracts and then posting the results back to the chain to ensure that they're secure and trustworthy and all of that. So it uses Stellar's multi-sig functionality to allow a group of turrets to all run some arbitrary code that a developer uploaded and generate and sign a transaction, which then must be approved by the ledger when it's submitted to the ledger by the user. It's a pure layer 2 in that it really sits on top of the Stellar network and does additional computation that isn't possible or efficient on the base ledger.
Nice. Kind of starting off, I had a chance to really go through your write-ups. By the way, who does your write-ups, man? They're always really good. Is that you that does these?
Yeah, that's me.
All right, Marcus.
I appreciate it.
The man of many talents. No, seriously, I always learn something. The last couple blog posts you guys did, and I really enjoyed reading this one too. So protocols and Stellar. So you guys, Script3 is the name of the company that you own with your partners. You guys have been looking into building DeFi protocols on Stellar, and that's what kind of got you motivated. So knowing your background, and as far as a researcher, looking at, I'm sure you looked at all blockchains that were out there. The first question that I wanted to ask is why Stellar? Why not? I mean, there's already protocols that have DeFi. Why was it so important in your perspective to bring DeFi to the Stellar network?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I answer that one a lot. But if you had asked me a year ago, the answer would have been completely different. I think there's still a good reason for it. But originally, the reason that we were interested in doing DeFi on Stellar was because Stellar is really fast. It's very cheap. And that's partially because it doesn't have native DeFi capabilities, because processing a smart contract through 1,000 nodes on a blockchain is really expensive and very inefficient. Decentralized ledgers and computation networks aren't really meant to do high-level computation like is required by a smart contract. So that's why smart contracts on Ethereum are so expensive. So because we wanted to do stuff in finance, we originally were looking at the different blockchains, and we realized that there's no way you could make an effective derivatives market on Ethereum in its state back then because it would have been way too expensive. I mean, you can go trade an option on Robinhood for free. Why are you going to spend $10 to do it or $100 to do it on Ethereum, right? Those DeFi like native protocols have done a phenomenal job of scaling. And so I think the pure cost argument isn't really there anymore because, I mean, Solana's probably just as fast as Stellar. But when you look at the work the Stellar ecosystem has done to accomplish its core mission of serving a global ecosystem and underrepresented groups in the financial ecosystem, they've done a great job of making it really easy to build fintech apps on Stellar to process payments and serve as bank accounts for people in developing countries. And that's really the entire goal of DeFi. You want to take these financial applications that only exist in the West for the most part and allow someone in Nigeria to have an interest product on their phone in a wallet. So Stellar is still far ahead when it comes to actually serving those communities and having a really well-developed ecosystem that can serve those communities. So if you combine that with DeFi, you can allow someone in Nigeria or someone in Latin America to have access to like lend assets that are borrowed by a hedge fund in America, and then they get interest from that hedge fund. And now you have a truly global financial ecosystem that can truly serve anybody. And a lot of those other DeFi ecosystems, their tech is great, but the actual ecosystem development and their efforts to support a global ecosystem aren't there currently, and may not be there given the focus of the institutions that are behind them.
And I read so much, and you're probably a lot more educated on this than I am, but you read so much about one of the issues. It's like they say it's like a bottleneck of capital, in America. And I wonder, when something like DeFi and connecting these regulated financial structures, these hedge funds, as you mentioned, to the globe, I've got to imagine that's got to have a huge net positive, even just the economy of even a place like the United States, even though maybe people aren't using it directly here, but the money being able to travel across the globe, would have some great impacts.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, it's a crazy. There's a crazy amount of capital that's really stuck in the U.S. But if you can deploy that to productive projects in developing countries where there is a lot of need for capital and not a lot of availability, all of a sudden the capital gets a lot more useful.
There you go. So let's talk about Project Venus. How did this get started? I mean, one of the things that stuck out in my head was, oh, wow, you partnered with JST Capital on this.
Yeah.
I said, wow. For those that are listening who have no idea who JST Capital is, I know that they've been market makers, or at least testing out market making on the Stellar DEX for a couple years. How did that partnership come together?
Yeah, so JST does a lot of market making on Stellar and Ripple, just on the DEXs. And how it happened was we started getting really involved with Turing signing servers right when Tyler announced them and said this is a project he's working on, because it was exactly what we were looking for when it came to actually managing to do decentralized trust-free computation on Stellar. So he wanted to build a proof of concept which showed how these would actually work and prove that they were a valuable concept. And I think, I'm not exactly sure what happened between SDF and JST, but my general understanding is JST came to them with an idea for short-term forward contracts as something that would be valuable in the space based on their experience market making. And Tyler started looking at organizations which would be capable of building this proof of concept and have the technical capabilities and expertise to actually make it work. And since we were trying to do DeFi with all the Turing signing server stuff, and we're really involved in building the protocol and making it actually run, he landed on us and asked if we'd be interested in helping build the proof of concept. So we spent a long time with JST and SDF ironing out the idea and figuring out what the protocol actually had to do and the issues it was trying to solve. And yeah, I guess it just kind of went from there.
That's pretty cool. I mean, it's inspiring. I hope it, people listening in. I mean, to me, it's just amazing that, Marcus was literally sitting in a dorm not too long ago, and now you're able to sit with a large organization like SDF and able to get connected with a powerhouse like JST. So that's great. So tell us about Project Venus. What is Project Venus? And are aliens involved? Please let me know.
No aliens. But
Darn, I was really
yeah,
hoping for some.
yeah. So it was initiated with really two goals. We wanted to show that TSS was secure and functional and could really run high level finance protocols. Because that was a lot of there was a lot of unsurety or unsureness about that, since unlike a traditional virtual machine and smart contract platform, you don't have live ledger access with Turing signing servers. You're pulling all your ledger data through Horizon. So we weren't sure if it would actually work correctly. One part of the project was figuring out that it actually works. The second part was creating a decentralized forward contract protocol on Stellar, because a lot of the remittance companies have a need for price discovery for DEX trading, because like say they need to send, they've got a client that's sending them Nairas and they need to send someone else with those Nairas, they need to send them Euros. So the forwards will give them the ability to lock in a price for that Naira Euro trade and effectively serve their clients without having to run the risk of the price of Naira Euro fluctuating between the time that they receive the order and actually fill it. So we wanted to make that capability and not necessarily have it tied to a centralized organization that could fail or become untrustworthy or anything like that. We just wanted it to live at a centralized network where it would exist for as long as people actually needed it.
Man, I'm glad you think of things like that, Marcus. I really do. I was reading about those contracts, forward contracts, and was really interesting to read and realize that, man, there are so many. And it's why I think a lot of times us in the community, we want things to like just rush out and be mainstream like now. But there's so many little tiny intricacies that you guys really have to work on. So that's definitely interesting. So there's a couple of questions, if you don't mind. I kind of want to go through things that I was reading that I kind of noted on here. You mentioned that that you guys are combining the network with Stellar's multi-sig capabilities to enable trustless DeFi protocols on Stellar. So my first question is, what makes a turret trusted? Because it says that the smart contract are going to use multiple trusted turrets. So what makes it trusted?
Yeah. So unlike most decentralized computation networks, turrets are permissioned by the application developer, in that you decide which turrets you actually upload your smart contract to and which turrets you trust to process that smart contract. It's your responsibility as a developer to choose turrets that correctly serve your needs. So what I mean by trusted turrets is when you have a DeFi application and you need to upload it to 6 different turrets to process it. Those turrets are hosted by different organizations in the ecosystem. When the network actually goes live, like SDF's going to host one, we're going to host one, JST's going to host one, Lightmint's going to host one, Lobster's going to host one, Task is going to host one. So like all those different organizations. And so you have to pick organizations that are trustworthy, that they're going to correctly process your smart contract. They're not going to act maliciously. They have a vested interest in turrets succeeding and your protocol running correctly. And then upload it to those turrets, because if you're uploading them to anonymous turrets, you have no way of knowing if that turret's going to be there in a year, or if that turret's going to do something funky and make your protocol not run right. You have to, and it's not like it's not a situation where one turret can bring down an entire protocol. With multi-sig, we build sort of a Byzantine fault tolerance system where it takes like 78% of turrets acting poorly for a protocol to actually be vulnerable. So it's as secure as the Stellar network in in the if you think about it that way, because Stellar's network also is Byzantine fault tolerant. But yeah, you need to pick. You can't just pick 10 random turrets that you have no idea who's running them. You have to pick 10 turrets that you trust, where you trust the organizations behind them, because you know they're going to act ethically. And if they don't act ethically, they have an organizational, reputation at stake, and potentially even like legal liabilities.
Okay, great. Take a quick pause. People listening, if you have questions, definitely want us to be interactive. So if you have a question, raise your hand and I'll try to get to you, throughout this little podcast here. So Stellar has signer limitations, and you guys talk about this. Stellar has a limit of 20 signers per account. And so how do you guys get around this issue?
Yeah. So that was one of the issues we initially ran into, because we needed like 6 different smart contracts, and there's if you need 10 signers per smart contract to make it trustworthy, you don't have enough signers. But we realized that you have a lot of flexibility when it comes to turret smart contracts, because they're not smart contracts in the Ethereum sense of things. They're like programmatic applications that are run on cloud computing servers, right? So you can kind of mesh all of your contracts together into one giant contract and just build an event handler in the front of it that takes an input from the user. So say you want to sell create a future. You would input create as the operation type, and then the program would take that input and run the create section of the contract to actually get you the desired output. So that was the main way that we got around it, and we're continuing to get around it. In the future, I think you'll have even more flexibility, because we want to, I think it was in like 2018 or 2019, a developer in the Stellar ecosystem, I don't remember who it was, they created a concept called Musig on Stellar, which takes a private key of an account and it fractures it into like 10 different private keys. And then once you combine all those private keys, it gives you, or combine the signatures of all those private keys, it gives you one correct signature. So you can kind of divide a private key that way. And I'm not a cryptographer, but I've talked to some people, and there are cryptographic ways to make that, instead of to change that system. So instead of like 10 of 10 signatures being needed to generate a complete signature, you can do 7 of 10 signatures or 6 of 10 signatures. So in that way, you can kind of artificially expand the limits of the Stellar ledger by just using cryptography. So we're looking at trying to build that system out more once we find the people in the ecosystem who can actually help us.
Neat. Something if you could talk about a little bit is that you mentioned that you guys use path payments operations, and that you were able to, I guess, set an acceptable slippage threshold so that if the DEX prices artificially drop, that you basically will have to rerun it, allowing for prices to normalize. Because I have like talking to, let's say, like Anthony Barker, for instance, he's told me of situations on the DEX where you can lose a lot of money. So if you like describe that a little bit for us.
Yeah. So path payments have they've got a input on the actual path payment operation that allows you to, well, let me back up a little bit. Path payments come in either strict send or strict receive varieties. So you either specify an amount that you will always send or an amount that you will always receive. On the flip side of that, there's also a max send and a min receive field. So say that you, Sam, want to use a path payment to send 100 USD and you want the other person to receive 25 XLM, but no less, right? So you can set your max send on a path payment strict send as 100 USD, and that means you will always send 100 USD. And you can send the min received as 25 XLM. And that means that if the end receiver will receive 25 XLM or more, the path payment will be processed. But if the DEX order book changes and all of a sudden they're only going to receive 20 XLM, it's going to force the transit or the operation to fail, and it'll just revert, and you won't actually end up sending your USD in the first place. So you can set that min received amount to be equal to your minimum or a maximum acceptable slippage.
No, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. It's similar to just to expand it a bit. It's similar to what like Uniswap does when they force you to specify a maximum slippage on swaps. It's the same concept. It's just built into the DEX, and it's something that honestly everybody should be using just to make sure that they have some protection if order books change suddenly.
Oh yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the advantages with the TSS, that it provides as far as building contracts compared to, the Ethereum virtual machine and others. I know that you guys talk a lot about the nimbleness, the ability to write smart contracts in TypeScript, JavaScript. It makes it a lot more easier to digest. For some of the listeners out there, I mean, how important is this?
It's incredibly important. It's one of the biggest upsides because Solidity or EVM runs with a custom language called Solidity, and it's built for that blockchain. And there aren't very many people that actually know it, and there are even less people that know it well. And on top of that, it has a whole bunch of limitations in the actual computing operations that you can do, because they want to keep you from doing anything too computationally intensive, because it simply won't function on a blockchain. But on the flip side of things, since we're running these through turrets and not on an actual blockchain, we don't really have any of those limitations, so we can just use normal JavaScript and TypeScript, and tons of people know those languages. So getting correct audits is much easier, because instead of having Solidity experts on their team, the auditing firms only need people that know JavaScript and TypeScript really well. And then also it's much easier on a user standpoint, because I don't know if anyone listening has ever tried to read a Solidity smart contract, but it isn't easy. They're a mess, and they're really hard to understand and digest. But at the same time, you're expected to run your money through them. So there's little visibility into the actual functionality there. But with TypeScript and JavaScript, there are a lot of, I think probably most engineers have at least some knowledge of them, or most people with some dev background. So it's really easy for a user with some amount of background in computer science to look at a smart contract and understand exactly what it's doing without having to have the very specialized knowledge that Solidity requires.
Great. So tell us, I mean, what are the next steps at this point? I mean, I saw that you can actually start testing this out right now. Am I correct on that?
Yeah. So the network is operational right now. It's just only on the testnet. But we're hosting a test turret. I think Task is too. So is Tyler. So are a couple other organizations and individuals in the ecosystem. So I think there are the last time I checked, there were 8 operational turrets running on the testnet. So you can upload smart contracts to all of them and get testing with them right now. But as for next steps, I think we're currently looking at doing an external audit of the turret protocol, just to make sure that we get just another check in there to make sure that it's completely secure. And then there are still a couple other pain points that we're ironing out. We need one of the requirements for turrets is to have a wide turret network and a wide number of available turrets to actually choose from when you upload your smart contracts to places. So we're talking to more organizations in the ecosystem and individuals in the ecosystem to talk to them about running a turret and what's necessary on their end. And so far, we found people are really responsive. It's really cheap to run a turret especially because you can use AWS, and AWS's free tier is really generous. So 99% of the time, it should be completely free for you to run a turret. And so we're just trying to get that network built out and get more people on board. But on the other side of that, we're trying to really decide what the security requirements should be for turrets, because if they're not secure, then the protocols built on them aren't secure. So what we need to come together as a turret ecosystem and decide what the uptime requirements should be, and what and whether turrets should run their own specialized Horizon instance to make sure that they have really fast response times and they're not dependent on the public Horizon instance to run, or if secret keys that are stored on turrets for contracts if those should be encrypted in SGX or software guard extension enclaves to make sure that even the turret provider can't access them. There's just a lot of questions that we have to answer there, and a lot of discussion that needs to happen so we can figure out an ideal, safe solution.
Incredible. Open up. Anybody has questions? I'll let a couple of minutes here. While you think of your question, want to let everybody know, remind you, tomorrow we've got Stephen Dang doing a live podcast. It's going to be YouTube. It's going to be on Twitter, Twitch. Stephen Dang is a man. He's an investor, long history investing in startups. Marcus, you might want to tune in for that as well. And it has history with the Gates Foundation, and it's partnered up through DFS Lab with Stellar. They're going to have they got a panel presentation coming up, but they also have a incubation Kickstarter that you can actually present your ideas, get some good feedback, and get some money for your project. So if you're developing out there in Africa, you got a project you're thinking about doing, definitely check into the podcast. Tomorrow, it's going to be at 12:30 p.m. Eastern, so you don't want to miss that. Anyone have any questions out there? I know Marcus covers a lot of it, so it looks like, Marcus, you might have done a great job. Everybody's either deathly afraid to ask a question because you're so smart, or you've just explained it all so well.
Yeah, I try to be comprehensive.
No, you're great. So if they have any questions, what's the best way to get in contact with you and the team?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a turrets Discord which you can find, or like a TSS Discord, which you can find by going to let me figure out the URL really quick. It's tss.stellar.org. That has links to all the resources, including the Discord. You can also pop into Script 3's Discord and ask questions there. Or, honestly, you can tweet at us and I'll be happy to respond, or message me on Discord or ask a question in the Stellar Global chat. And I'm always happy to direct you to the right resources or respond. But most of the main discussion on turrets is happening in that TSS Discord. And I highly recommend that anybody interested goes and joins, because that's where we're going to be doing a lot of the discussion about security and turret implementations and all of that fun technical stuff that will hopefully make this a wonderful smart contract engine for Stellar going forward.
Awesome. One final question for me. What do you think is the realistic timeline, from going here to mainnet? What are you realistically looking at?
Yeah, I'm going to give a different answer than other people will, because I know that Tyler said that he's not really sure if we'll be live by fall. But that's also his conservative SDF opinion. My personal opinion, and I think the opinion of other users in the ecosystem, is that we're going to be live by September. We want to launch our lending platform, and also, by the way, the Venus smart forward contracts are going to be built into Yield Blocks, which is our lending protocol. So those will be accessible to the community because Project Venus probably itself isn't actually going to go live. We're going to be the ones pushing that. So we're trying to launch that in September, and we need turrets to be live for that. And I know that Task wants to do some stuff with NFTs, and so does Lightmint, and they need turrets for that too. So I think it'll be coming along pretty fast.
Awesome. Well, definitely keep me posted. I look forward to playing around with Yield Blocks. And thank you, Marcus, for coming out here at such a short notice to speak to the global community. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let us know if we can ever help you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Sam. I'm always happy to be here and talk to you.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Hey, thanks everybody for joining. Amir out there, I see you. Doran, Fergal, everybody else that had a chance to join. Appreciate it. We'll continue to do more of these. Thank you.